Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. The school bubble system is about to pop as Gavin Williamson sets out plans to end it with the next stage of lockdown easing.
We recognise that the system of bubbles and isolation is causing disruption to many children's education.
At least 20 teenagers have been killed in London so far this year. Police fear death tolls could be the highest in nearly a decade. And the nation gets ready for England's semi-final clash against Denmark on Wednesday. Can they reach their first major final since 1966? The Education Secretary confirms the school bubble system in England will end with the next stage of lockdown easing. The system has led large numbers of pupils being sent home to self-isolate if one child tests positive for the CCP virus. Here's NTD's Jane Well with more.
The Education Secretary says the school bubble system in England will be scrapped as the country moves into the next stage of lockdown easing, currently scheduled for the 19th of July.
We recognise that the system of bubbles and isolation is causing disruption to many children's education. That is why we'll be ending bubbles and transferring contact tracing to the NHS test and trace system for early years settings, schools and colleges.
He said schools will no longer need to stagger start and finish times, adding that it's up to the schools if they want to continue with restrictions until the end of the summer term. And from August the 16th, children will only need to isolate if they test positive for COVID-19. It's welcome news, though questions remain on how pupils will catch up with exams.
So what assessment has the government made of the impact on children not at school in exam years, and what remedial action are they going to take to ensure that there's a level playing field for these children who've missed so much school, they have a level playing field for next year's exams?
I know my right honourable friend raises a very important issue and something that is of course concern to teachers, parents, but most of all pupils who will be looking towards 2022.
He says plans will be announced over the summer. Points were also made about how low risk children are to COVID-19.
Will the Secretary of State reassure parents that the chances of any child falling seriously ill from COVID are, quote, vanishingly small, and there is no risk to children by what he's announced today?
My right honourable friend is right to point out how, as Professor Chris Whitty has pointed out so many times, that children have very little adverse effects of COVID on them if they're unfortunate enough to get it. And this is why we think that the steps that we have outlined today, combined with the vaccination programme that we are rolling out right across the country, means that it is right to take this next cautious but important step forward.
Gavin Williamson's announcement comes as absences are at their highest rate since schools reopened in March. More than 600,000 pupils are not in school for COVID-related reasons, with just 4.5% having confirmed positive tests for the virus. The school bubble guidelines mean if one child tests positive, everyone in that child's bubble has to self-isolate. There's been reports of some pupils faking lateral flow tests to get time off school. It's also caused issues for parents juggling their work and childcare. The government has been under a lot of pressure to change the rules over concerns it's unnecessary. As part of the next step of easing in general, mask wearing and social distancing is due to end on July 19th. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
The number of violent teenage deaths in London this year could be the worst in nearly a decade, with 2 more boys losing their lives in separate stabbings this week. A 15-year-old died after being stabbed near Woolwich Arsenal Station in south-east London on Monday afternoon. Then, a few hours later, a 16-year-old boy was pronounced dead at the scene in Lambeth, South London. So far this year, 21 teenagers have been killed in the capital. There are concerns that the tally for the year will exceed the previous high of 27 in 2017. This would mean the highest teenage death toll since 2012. Earlier this year, senior police officers expressed concern that the violence may rise over the summer months as it did last year when lockdown measures were eased. From the middle of next month, fully vaccinated people and children in England will no longer have to self-isolate after close contact with someone who tests positive for the CCB virus, also known as coronavirus. That's according to new rules announced on Tuesday by the Health Secretary. NTD's David English brings us this report.
Today, Mr. Speaker,
addressing the House of Commons, Health Secretary Sajid Javid says rules on self-isolation are being eased for the fully vaccinated and under 18s because the vaccination programme has built a protective wall against the virus.
From the 16th of August, anyone who's a close contact of a positive case will no longer have to self-isolate if they have been fully vaccinated.
Under the new rules, children under the age of 18 will also be exempt from the self-isolation rules. Instead, they will be given advice about whether they should get tested. Javid said the new rules are a more proportionate response to the current pandemic situation.
This new approach means that we can manage the virus in a way that's proportionate to the pandemic while maintaining the freedoms that are so important to us all.
This follows the Prime Minister's announcement on Monday that he intends to scrap most of the remaining restrictions on the 19th of July, including mask wearing and social distancing. Labour calls the government's plan reckless, and for ministers to maintain protections such as mask wearing. David English, NTD News.
Restrictions for UK travellers entering Germany will be eased from Wednesday. Germany's National Disease Control Centre announced it was moving the UK out of their highest risk category. NTD's Neil Woodrow has the story.
UK travellers who are fully vaccinated or can prove they've recovered from COVID-19 will no longer be required to quarantine upon arrival in Germany. Germany's Robert Koch Institute said late on Monday that Britain, Portugal, Russia, India and Nepal will be moved from the top risk group to the second highest category of high incidence areas. Non-vaccinated individuals or those who have received only one shot will be required to quarantine for 10 days, but they can exit quarantine from the 5th day after arrival with a negative test result. The UK had been in the top risk category since May the 23rd. Officials say the listings will be reviewed as the number of infections caused by the Indian variant in Germany rises. Travellers from Germany into the UK are still required to quarantine for 10 days, with an option to test to release on day 6. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
More deaths than births took place in the UK last year for the first time in nearly half a century. According to new data, this is the result of a rise in deaths and the drop in births during the CCP virus pandemic. The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics show nearly 690,000 deaths were registered in 2020, while just over 683,000 live births were recorded. This means there were over 6,000 more deaths than births in the UK last year. It is the first time deaths have exceeded births since 1976. It is also only the second time this has happened since the start of the 20th century. The pandemic meant that more deaths were registered in the UK in 2020 than in any year since the First World War. At the same time, the number of births dropped. But it doesn't mean the total UK population declined in 2020, as migration may have led to an overall growth in numbers. Gareth Southgate's England team are preparing for the game of their lives tomorrow as they try to reach their first major final since the 1966 World Cup. NTD's Joy Duguid brings us this report.
London is abuzz ahead of England's much-anticipated Euro 2020 semi-final match against Denmark to be played at Wembley Stadium on Wednesday. England fans are optimistic about their side's chances.
I am positive. I've got to say, very positive about the semi-finals. The way that we've played so far, very, very good.
It's going to be close. If we play well, I think we've got a chance. I don't want to be too optimistic though. I've been disappointed so many times.
Denmark have had an incredible run, delighting fans even though they lost one of their stars to a cardiac arrest in their opening game. But Gareth Southgate's side has inspired England fans as they try to reach their first major final since the 1966 World Cup triumph. Unbeaten England start as clean favourites with a stronger squad and home advantage. The fear that gripped them in previous campaigns refreshingly absent so far. The game will take place in front of 60,000 fans at Wembley, but due to COVID-19 restrictions, only Danes resident in the United Kingdom will be able to attend. A fan zone has been set up in Trafalgar Square, where fans not holding tickets will come together to cheer their teams on. Joy Dugid, NTD News.
London Mayor Sadiq Khan is offering the chance to win tickets for the Euro 2020 final at Wembley Stadium through rather unusual means. From Wednesday, Londoners can enter an online draw for the tickets by providing proof they received their first jab of a COVID-19 vaccine or have booked an appointment for it. Up for grabs are 2 tickets to Sunday's final, as well as 50 pairs of tickets to the fan zone in Trafalgar Square. London has one of England's lowest vaccine uptake rates. 63% of over 18s have received their first dose. And in other news, in the middle of a global chip shortage, a Chinese-owned company buys the UK's largest chip producer. The deal was announced yesterday. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the story.
A Chinese-owned firm called Nexperia has acquired Britain's largest semiconductor producer. Currently, there's a global shortage of chips, and some say the deal has national security implications.
Well, if this deal was to have taken place in the United States, there's absolutely no doubt that it would have been hauled up before CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment.
In April, the government introduced the National Security and Investment Act, which includes preventing key assets from being taken over by foreign powers.
The UK was meant to have powers that were equivalent, if not tougher, but Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, has inexplicably decided not to act.
The business secretary says the government is monitoring but doesn't want to intervene at the moment.
And I think this is a real test moment for the UK's powers. If the business secretary doesn't act here in a case in which national security concerns are perhaps clearer than any other that I could imagine, many people will feel that the UK's powers are all bark and no bite.
Armstrong says most company valuations globally have been decimated, with the exception of China.
China, the country that has an awful lot to answer for in the spread of the disease, is seeming to be the economic beneficiary of it.
CNBC sources say the deal is worth £63 million. If so, that seems cheap, as large semiconductor foundries tend to cost closer to the £1 billion and upward mark. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
The Chinese parent company of TikTok, called Bytedance, quietly launched a unit in London called Byte Plus in June to sell artificial intelligence-related technology services to companies outside China. NTD's Foreign Affairs correspondent Sharon Xu takes a closer look.
Bytedance launched a new division called Byte Plus last month to market its technology services outside China. Companies can use some of the algorithm and other AI-related tech used to power the short video app TikTok. Bytedance and TikTok are no strangers to controversy, particularly in the area of handling of sensitive data among young users. Bytedance could face a damages claim worth billions of pounds in London's High Court over allegations they illegally harvested the private data of millions of European children. TikTok was accused of violating UK and the European Union data protection laws by processing data without adequate security measures and transparency, nor the consent of guardians or legitimate interest. In February, Bytedance agreed to pay $92 million in a class action settlement over data privacy claims from TikTok users in the United States. TikTok allegedly collected data without consent in accordance with Illinois privacy law. TikTok insiders reportedly told CNBC the popular social media app is tightly controlled by its Chinese parent company, and that includes access to its U.S. users' data. According to CNBC, cybersecurity experts worry that the Chinese government could use TikTok to spread propaganda or censorship to American audience, or to exercise influence over users who may come to regret what they posted on the service. Sharon Xu, NTD News.
Still to come, tensions between Moscow and French winemakers are bubbling over after a Russian law strips champagne of its coveted title. That and more when we return. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.